All right, we are live. My name is Rob here from Rob's School of Music, and we are honored to have Living Color here hanging with us. Unbelievable full band. We're gonna tell stories. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna live life together. So, how you guys doing?
We're good. We're
Surviving.
good. I'm
Don't
good.
everybody
I don't know
jump
about
in at once.
I'm
yeah.
fine.
We're
Everything's good.
we're all surviving, and
Yeah, just
though
yeah.
far apart, we're always
Hope
together.
you don't do
How
that.
about that? I'm being nice today.
I like that. That's very positive. Very positive.
Get
So,
ready. It won't last. Anyway,
so I mean, you guys have been around the world and played so many incredible stages, and we'll kind of, go individually throughout some of the experiences. But the first question I always like to jump off with is, being that we're a music school, a lot of our students are not in age necessarily, but just in experience on the younger side of things. Towards the beginning of their journey. And a big thing we try and do is put them in groups together where we get them out. Back when you could do shows, we would have them perform at a local event or something like that. And a big thing they deal with is stage fright and nerves,
Mm,
anxiety. Do you guys have any tips to overcoming that sort of stuff?
wow.
my axiom is feel the fear and do it anyway. Use that fear that you have every time I go on stage, no matter when I'm going on stage, no matter what I'm doing. I always get a bit of stage fright, but I use that to propel myself onto the stage. It's like you never know what's going to come out of it, so feel it and go for it.
That's good
Awesome.
advice.
Yeah.
Uh, wow. That stage fright is a weird thing because um I remember, man, the first time I was on stage in front of a lot of people, I was my back was turned to the audience and I was asked if the curtain was closed. It was a high school assembly. And I was so freaked out. I was yelling at the drummer, what's the first tune? And the curtains opened up behind me and I turned around and it was the whole junior class. And then I just started, I don't even know what happened, man. I just started hitting the guitar and then it was over. You know what I mean? It's like the music, the music is going to carry you. You have to have faith in the music. Whatever else is going on, we played on a lot of big stages and you think you're over it, but you can get caught. Anybody can get caught with nervousness. But if you put the music in front of you, you're gonna be okay. You have to have trust. You have to trust that. You have to trust that and trust your mates on stage that they're gonna also hold you up too. Um, whatever's going on. That's pretty much it.
I like that. I like that. Awesome. Well, that's, whenever I ask that question, the answers are always across the board. And I think the bottom line is whatever works for one person is we only want to build them into ourselves. So if that works for one guy, that works for another guy, we should all take that in and just find what works for us because it's so individualized. Like a big thing for us here is we try and it's not cookie cutter. Music is hard to be cookie cutter, right? So we try and teach each person in a different way. And if a different bit of information about overcoming some sort of adversity helps one person particularly, I think that's just a beautiful thing. Um, so, I mean, you guys' talent is just absurd. I think each one of you is a master of what you do. We teach all different instruments here, and we've spoken with many guitarists along the way, not a ton of vocalists. So, Corey, do you have any tips on, what's a day in the life of a gig? Your warm up routine, warm down, tea, lemon, honey.
None of that's the only thing that works is working. So if you're going to sing, and if you're going to sing with a band, you have to be prepared. Your instrument has to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So that means that you have to be warmed up and warm enough to get to a certain point and get your body to do a certain thing. You have to be prepared for the next time you sing. So that means you have to warm down. So uh, in terms of like things to put into your body, water is number one. Always, nothing but water. Honey and lemon are not going to do anything but put a band-aid on whatever issues that you have. But the more hydrated you are, the more your body is in a place that is loose and ready to go, the better off you are. Um, My advice to singers in band is tell everyone in rehearsals, tell everyone to turn down, because you're not playing in front of a live audience. You're playing in front of yourselves. So you don't have to go to 12. You can play it at 8 and be just as fine. You wear out the singer, the gig is no good. So that's my advice.
I love that. I absolutely love that. My friends make fun of me because guitar is my prime instrument, and I'm the only guitarist on the planet you're going to meet that you never have to tell to turn down. I'm always absurdly low because I always played with good singers, and I always was concerned about I don't want to make their job harder than it has to be.
Want to start a band? I know some other guys that can really have a good time. Maybe. How do you tell a drummer to turn down? How do you tell a drummer to turn down?
I don't know. All my drummers would throw sticks at me whenever I asked. So. All right. Now, how about gear stuff? I mean, if you can see, I got tons of pedals. I'm a PRS guitar artist. So Vernon and Doug, like you guys, massive pedal boards. Like, what is the thought process when you're picking a certain piece of gear to take? Signal flow? Is it trial and error?
Well, you want to go first, Vernon?
Yeah, man. Well, Living Color. The Living Color songs demand a certain palette. I think Doug would agree. Like, our different gigs have different palettes associated with them.
Right.
And since there are different palettes associated with them, it's really, what works for each of the tunes. And I use a kind of multi-effect, but also along with pedals. I've been using the Line 6 Helix unit. As well as using stuff from Eventide and some stuff from Strymon and certain, different pedal companies like Chase Bliss. And I'll swap different things in and out, But the main thing is having a palette and also to have subtle differences, like say the sound I have for Cult is not the same as have the sound I have for Middleman or Desperate People, so that over the course of a set, these subtle differences, also add up to the sound of the band. And, we're just both, I know we're both curious about the frequencies and what's the next freaky thing. We're always searching for the next other thing. So, but at the bottom line is make it all work for what we're doing.
Cool.
Yeah. And I guess to chime in on what Vernon just said, on the other side of the coin, it's preparation. It's spending time with your instrument, making sure that it's functioning properly, have good cables, good power going into your pedals. And then also, like Vernon said, we both have a way of exploring. And as time has gone on in the band of Living Color, we found a way to kind of like continue to challenge ourselves with the sounds that we have, but also play the music. And it keeps things fresh and vibrant. So when it comes to pedals for me personally, and my pedal board it kind of changes over time, but sort of it's been the same. One thing that I always have on constantly is a SansAmp. And it's my SansAmp bass driver. That's the one unit that's always on. For me, other units that I use, which is, right here, I'm using some Dark Glass products, which are really good, a whammy pedal, Pigtronics products, like the new Source Audio C4 synthesizer, different things for different sounds. But the key for me is I have to play with the drummer and I have to play with with everybody else. And I'm constantly listening to what everybody's doing and trying to find a balance and the proper approach to let out certain sounds. But most importantly, it has to be musical. It still has to be a part of the of the music that we're playing at the time, and also speak in a way where it all balances out. It's like maybe sometimes I could hit a device where it's like I'm no longer playing in the sandbox with everybody else. It's a bit overwhelming, but if it's done if you drop bombs at the right place, it could be quite nice. over the years, Vernon and I have developed a way to speak to each other, and we constantly keep each other engaged on stage, if I may say that, just from our
Absolutely.
sounds, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know,
And it's not just, oh, go ahead.
you know, you mentioned signal flow, and that's a very, you know, that's a very important component of it. You know, like the difference between you doing things in series and doing things in parallel, because you want your instrument, you want the actual naked instrument to be as clean as possible. You know what I mean? So one of the things, like, people will see like a lot of pedals, but they may be thinking that everything is going sequentially, but actually a lot of times my signal flow is in parallel, because if you do everything in series, my signal will start to degrade. And instead of doing that, you know, I have a whole way of kind of splitting my signal and sending it to different groupings of effects, including synthesis, and sometimes I use a iPad sounds and things like that.
I love it. Like I'm a huge gearhead. One of the things we do here at the school, back when we could have people in real life, is my entire pedal collection is in a case in the front of in their lobby, and I let the students take out the pedals like you would take out a library book. Hey, go home and try this thing out. Hey, go home and try this thing out. Actually, some of them have had them since COVID started, so I don't know if I'll see those again. But usually it's a reciprocal thing, because I love the idea of tweaking and modifying sounds. And having watched rig rundowns with you guys, it's just incredible the amount of stuff that's all working in unison in a really, really cool way. So that's inspiring.
I just want to chime in real quick. The one thing that's very important to remember with all the kids is there's a responsibility when you have pedals, because they can stop a gig. You have to make sure things are working properly. You have to constantly test them and make sure the pedal that you choose, some pedals, when you hit them to activate them, they'll pop. And when you're at a big gig, it's problematic. So it's like, there's a responsibility as a bass player in particular. But it's very, very important to make sure that your stuff is working properly. And you have to constantly check on it. Make sure your batteries are working in your bass. If you have a pedal that has a battery, make sure that everything is fresh, all your cables, all your power, because it'll stop the gig.
Sure.
It'll stop sound check. And it will happen.
You know, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than the worst problem to have in a band context with gear is an intermittent problem. Like the problem that just shows up and is obvious, you can fix that. But the problem that comes and goes away, seems to be fine, is the problem that's going to show up in the exact middle of the gig. So those kind of things, like, because the thing is, we live on hope and a prayer, right? So you jiggle a chord and then you feel lucky, and actually that's we have a tendency, because I think we're very how can I say, we're very like baseball players have these rituals and things, you know what I mean? We want to keep certain things the same way all the time, and if something's going down, if something's going wrong, you need to handle it as soon as it comes up, and don't tell yourself it's going to be okay.
That's tremendous advice, actually, because you're right. We just want to, it'll be fine, don't worry. And then, yeah.
But you got to recover from that as well, because once that happens, you as a player can, what I call, hit the shank. You know what I mean? It kind of like you just get taken out of the whole game because you prepared and were at home. You were at home. You did everything right. You got all your pedals together, did everything right, and then you packed it up. You got in the plane, it got jumped around, got the sound check, and guess what? Something doesn't work. And guess what else? It's a Saturday afternoon at 6 o'clock. And guess what? You can't replace it.
Yeah.
So I'm up there going, hey, Vernon, man, you got that?
Absolutely.
But the good thing is, because I'll let him chime in next. Between the three of us, we generally have.
He has a pedal board too.
But if something goes down, I could go, yo, Vernon, man, you got that 9-spot power supply that I could use.
Oh, yeah.
We've saved each other, whether it's a whammy pedal power, or Will's got a whammy pedal. Will, I need this or whatever. So
you've always got to have a one spot ready.
Yeah, I have a one spot ready.
You always got to have a one spot ready, for real talk.
It's true though, isn't it, Bernie?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, Will, you
But
should ask Will. Will really is kind of like dealing in the world of electronics as well. So
well,
you
that was gonna
can't
be my
have
next question. Yeah. So, it's so cool to watch the arc of you guys as a band. It started here, where everyone knows this amazing record.
Mhm.
But as your sound developed over the years, there were more electronic elements and synth kind of stuff in there. And then, from a drummer's perspective, like what took you there? And then, what's that process like for you?
Wow. Well, it's a combination of things. I mean, I'm fortunate to be in a band with Vernon and Doug because I actually can learn about the pedals from a guitar player and bass player's point of view. One of the things, I mean, I learned from both guys. One of the things that I learned from Doug was about signal paths because I used to just think you could put any pedal on the floor and slap it together and connect it. And Doug would tell me, no, man, don't put the delay before this, before that. What led me there was basically just one of Doug's colleagues. First of all, is Keith LeBlanc, is a drummer that I really dig, who was doing things with electronics early on when a lot of drummers were not. And I had a couple of chats with Keith just about sound. I'm a bit of a sound freak. I like, all types of acoustic sounds and different timbres of drums and percussion. And the idea was really just to put myself in a guitar player or bass player or saxophone player's shoes and think about my instrument beyond just a pitch, a tone, a muted sound, or a stick and a brush. I wanted to have delays. I wanted to have distortion. At that time, it was around the mid 90s, and this amazing instrument came out called the wave drum. And I remember, I think Doug's the first one I played. I played the instrument for Jack DeJohnette, and I went out to Long Island to the Cork factory, and I saw the demo and it looked great. So I picked up two of them and I came home and I didn't read the manual and I just plugged it in and I said, finally, I can start to get into some of these kind of spaces Vernon and Doug are in, and in a percussive way. There's also melodies there as well, but then now I can sort of hybrid the melodic situation with the rhythmic situation and start to experiment with keys, pitches, scales, and rhythm. So it was really an experiment. And then I made this recording called Drum Wave, and it was me with the drum and some pedals recording. At that time I had ADATs, just recording like 2 or 3 hours of noodling. And Doug's the first person I played it for. Doug popped over one day and I said, check this out. And he goes, man, you should start to really incorporate that and use it and put the record out. So I just kind of chopped up a few things and I put that record out. And then it was the beginning of me really starting to think about my instrument in a different way. And both of those guys are scientists, so I can ask them the academic things behind sounds. Some things don't work with electronic percussion. Some guitar pedals and bass pedals don't work because of the frequency range that comes out of a drum. A djembe or a tabla is going to have a different effect on delay than a snare drum would, for example. So that was also the fun part of seeing what works where in the percussion family, what works with the pedal family. But I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It takes me out of the usual. I guess it's kind of like playing the drum set is driving a car, and playing with the pedals is driving a car where you could take the top down.
Nice.
It's like a different experience. The top down experience is more the pedal experience. So same vehicle, different experience.
Tremendous analogy. Love that. Yeah, I think it's so cool, if you follow the arc, through the different records to see these different things and watching your live videos, as I was prepping for this, I was like, holy crap, these guys are doing ridiculous stuff. What is the writing process like? Like, Doug and Will, you just jamming out something, Verdon, you coming with a riff, Corey, is it melody? Is it lyrics? Like, how do you put songs together?
We've done songs all different kind of ways. We've done songs from jams. We've done songs from individual writers bringing the whole tune in. We've had collaborations between us. Two or three of us to work on. So the songs have had all different kind of genesis. And they've come about all different kinds of ways. One thing I want to mention about electronics is that Living Color, we early on, we used have always used extensive use of sampling as part of the sound palette of the band from the very first record. Some we've used things as intros, we've used things as accents, as musical components of our songs. We haven't actually done a lot of sequencing, like using playing to sequences. We've actually done a lot, mainly played live, but used samples. And we go back to like the S900, the S1000. I mean, the early
Oh
Akai.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Early Akai joints. We've done everything. Triggered samples from trigger samples from laptops. Um, will any given night it's an instant remix because will hit every damn thing. Here, the introduction to Love Raises Ugly Head can show up in the middle of This Little Pig, and that would be
And you got to see Corey's face when that
remix.
happens.
It's a constant remix. Funny vibe can show up at any old time. So that's basically a feature of the Living Color experience we see live.
Well, I gotta give Vernon mad props because first joining the band, Vernon basically gave me an assignment. In all reality, I mean, he gave me an assignment, especially the other songs you hit the sample and play, but Funny Vibe had samples throughout while the song's playing, and I was kind of going, well, how am I going to do this? And Vernon's vibe was like, you got to figure, I don't know, man, we got to. So and I play that song left-handed kind of, so I got to play the samples with the left hand and then play the other patterns a little bit more right-handed between. So I approached that song. So that is, I mean, he gave me a couple of assignments, but that was the one I have to honestly say, Funny Vibe, to play Funny Vibe left-handed lead and then still play the samples and still play the pattern was something I had to work on both at home and in the practice space. So Vernon kind of really pushing me into that area also opened up my head to using the drum cat, right, and these other kind of samples early on. And I would say sometimes it's my fault, and then sometimes in those early '80s days, the samples would misfire. I wasn't playing it at all, and you would just
we turn around and you I look at this place like it's not me, it's not me, it's not
me. So there were times when the technology wasn't great, and you could hit the snare really hard and Love Rears would go off. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. You had to deal. It was still dealing with the guitar. The thing about the guitar and bass pedals are, to me, they almost kind of come out the box really set up for you to use in a brilliant way. When you start getting drum things in there, the drum community came to the baseball game like in the sixth inning, and they were more interested in the sounds and technology. So our field, things had to catch up to the guitar, I think, because things misfired. Some samples didn't have volume control, some did. So there were all these variations. And as Roland was probably more in drum cat, Mario DeCurtis's gear, which is killer, the drum cat gear. Those were the first companies that got into individual volumes, splitting the sounds and that kind of thing. But I have to give Vernon credit. I remember early on, that was an assignment to think about how you're going to physically play the samples where they are in the song and still play the pattern. So it also, the electronic acoustic thing also that was the beginning of me thinking about now, even my academic format into playing sounds and playing patterns where the drum set wasn't just the palette anymore. The hi-hat and snare and tom wasn't it anymore, and the cymbals. Now you have a pad with 6 to 9 sounds. How are you going to still make something funky and then still have the accents and make it sound like really you're not doing it in a way? And that was the fun challenge of combining both of those things.
That's so cool. So cool. It's like I said earlier, all you guys are so incredibly talented at what you do. And now you add these other elements in there. It's all of a sudden like, oh, here's something. Oh, we're going to nail that too. Like it's just continually reinventing something. And I think that's so inspiring for any musician watching, for me personally, with the pedals and things like that, new pieces of technology and just axe effects, neural, the quad cortex is coming out. Like always to have your finger on that pulse,
Oh yeah.
It'll always change. I mean, if you think about the history of music, music and technology have always been parallel, right? I mean, if you think about the manufacturing process, the way things were recorded, the actual instruments, the microphones evolved over time. So all of these things have changed. At one point you had to bounce. They had 4 tracks. At one point, the only way you could mix was to have the bass player come close and bring the upright bass closer to the microphone. And so it's amazing when we listen to old recordings how great old recordings sound, because it was 2 tracks, 1 track, mono,
Right.
right? So people had to be positioned. So all of the things that we're doing are evolving constantly. And the same thing with the young people you're teaching, all of that's changed. All of that's changing. They recently had a young guy who got a Grammy nomination for an album that he recorded entirely on an iPad. He did everything on his iPad, and it was like an R&B thing. And he got a nomination for engineering, and it was like, so a lot of things upend, the conventional wisdom as we go along.
Yeah.
Like you have a piece of gear and you think it's nice and you're set, right? And then you hear about something that's half the price and half the size.
It does twice as much
So
stuff.
my
Right.
question to you is, having a school, what's your technique in the school? I'm curious because all of us do a little bit of teaching and techniques, and just a question to you, like how is it working? I know it's COVID now, but are you using, like, what's the academic range? You using electronics? You also using, YouTube?
Yeah.
It's got to be interesting to be a student these days, from what Vernon is saying. So how is it working in your
It's
facility?
been so quick to have to pivot. I think I was saying to Doug before we went live, like we were doing, hundreds of lessons a week in person, and then the second death from COVID in New York State happened in our town before stuff got crazy in New York City.
Wow.
And like a week before that hit mainstream media, I just pulled all the lessons. I said, we're going online. I don't know what this thing is, but safety first. And it started on Zoom. And now we use some supplemental software called Musico, which allows you to sort of interact in pseudo real time. You can put the backing track, they can record their parts. I got to hand it to my team of teachers. Every person has really gone in head first with multiple camera angles, close up of the fretboard, close up to the keyboard. Our drum teacher, we're in New York State. He lives out in Utah because
Wow.
we just needed someone virtual. And he runs a Roland kit through an interface so he can mix the channels individually. And you can hear every channel perfectly on the other side. And like Zoom, it gets like, the bandwidth is tiny, so it garbles up. But once we brought this guy on, all the students were like, it's like we're sitting in the same room. So it's like constantly struggling to find these technical workarounds to be able to jam. Because in person, we would jam. Like we have a big, jam room in the back, and we would always go back and do it. But it's finding lots of ways to, I'll send them tons of videos, all different degrees of professionally done to just on my iPhone real fast from home, whatever they need. Just trying to be available as much as possible and make it feel as close to normal.
I don't want to be rude, gentlemen. I gotta grab a cable because my phone battery's going down. I'm just gonna mute my camera. You can continue. I can hear you. It's in my jacket. I just want to go grab my cable and come right back.
No worries.
All right, thanks.
No worries.
What's really happening is Will's on a secret mission, and we can't know about it.
That's right. That was an undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location. Yeah.
So maybe we can go around and you guys can answer this one individually, and then just Will can go last for it. What was for each of you the first record or first concert that you attended or consumed that made you say, this is what I want to do?
Oh man. See, my first concert I ever saw, I bought the ticket with my own money, and which is connected to the first album I ever bought, was Funkadelic Cosmic Slop, and I saw Funkadelic on the Cosmic Slop tour at Madison Square Garden, and
Wow.
that was a completely crazy experience.
Wow.
That was wild. That was the whole P-Funk Funkadelic scenario.
Good times.
And it was a great show. And also War and Rare Earth were on that same bill. And War and Funkadelic were amazing. Yeah, it was that was something.
Cool.
When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my brother took me to the Apollo. to go see James Brown. It was one of those month-long stands James Brown was doing at the Apollo. And this was like we went to the evening show because they had 2 shows a day. And so the band was really warmed up. Everybody was going crazy. Everybody was going nuts. And I'm looking around at all these people yelling and screaming, and everybody on stage is yelling and screaming. It's like, I don't know what the hell this is. It's very, 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 very strange. I don't know what this is. But it did something to me. It actually it motivated me somehow. And I don't know how it did, but it did. There was that. And my parents took me around that same time to go see Jesus Christ Superstar. And I saw Carl Anderson, who sort of looked like me. And I said, I want to do that. I want to sound like that. And jump cut 30 years later, I do Jesus Christ Superstar with Ted Neely from the movie, and I'm in this band.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, for me, I was in the Bahamas. My mother's from Nassau, and I was about maybe 12 years old, but I had a premature mustache and a big afro. So I have young uncles, and they would sneak me into these nightclubs to see these bands. And one band that they took me to this place called the Banana Boat. And the name of the band that was performing was Ezra and the Polka Dots. And club is packed. And the Bahamian musicians, because they're playing constantly all the time for tourists, they're like a live jukebox. So they're playing anywhere from they're listening to country western to Motown, playing it really flawlessly. I'll never forget. So I go and I'm watching the band. It was like, first of all, I was just amazed that I was in a club. That was the first thing. Because if my mother knew that my uncles had me in that club, she would have skinned them alive. So I'm sitting around looking. I'm like, man, this is kind of cool. Now the other side of the coin is this. My uncles came up with the bright idea of telling people I was Jermaine Jackson in the Jackson 5. So what took place then was like this kind of sense of now they would take me to nightclubs and say, hey, man, we have Jermaine Jackson from the Jackson 5 here. And because there was no television station there and it was late 60s, people believed them. So they would throw me into the club, and my uncles would instantly start ordering drinks. So they used me as a way to crash clubs and order drinks. So now here I am. I'm playing a little bit of guitar at that time, and I'm digging the music. You know, I'm listening to like some of the first disco hi-hat was calypso hi-hat coming from the Caribbean, and I'm loving the music. But what I'm not digging is the fact that my uncles are using me I'm like, you know, to hustle me up to get drinks and stuff. So at that point, I made a decision. I was like, you know what? I got to go home and I got to figure out, do I want to spend my life impersonating the fraud, or do I want to try to really figure out how to play and really work at this instrument and play it? So that was kind of like the first time I saw kind of like the spark hit was in the Bahamas. The second time is when I got a chance to actually go on stage. And again, like Vernon, it was at a pep rally, high school. Mm-hmm. And ninth grade, curtains open. I don't even have a bass. I had a 4-string guitar that I just took the strings off. She couldn't afford a bass. I was trying to borrow a friend's bass, but he wouldn't even let me borrow his bass for the gig. Packed. 1970. I'll never forget that feeling, because when the curtain opens and you see your whole school looking at you, and those girls that you might have had your eye on, and I'm just kind of like, it's like you freeze for a minute and time stands still. That's the only way I can describe it. Time stood still, but I got through it, you know. So that was phase 2 of like, okay, I did it. That was a big gig for me. That was the first gig, you know. It was a huge gig. And because I have an older brother and sister, not to get too long-winded, there was a lot of bands around here, but then I went to go see Kool and the Gang. Kool and the Gang came to town, and I bought the record, big Kool and the Gang fan. And they came to town, and I was like, that stuff was so funky, and it was so dope that I was like, that's it. I'm a
Nice.
huge Kool and Gang fan. That did it for me.
That's awesome.
I only heard a piece of the question. Could you repeat that for me, please?
Yeah, man. What was the first concert you attended or record you ingested that made you say like, this is what I want to do?
First concert I attended. Wow. I would have to say, growing up in the Bronx and being around a lot of great musicians up here, the first concert I attended was some cats playing in the park. I mean, it wasn't really in the venue. And up here in the park, in Hafen Park, all the guys in the band know the guys that are from up this way, you know, the Unlimited Touches and the Tungsten Steels and Steve Jordan and Lenny Underwood, Pumpkin, so much great musicians in the area. What the guys used to do was they would get together in the afternoon and they would pick a record and play it from top to bottom. My brother happened to be one of the drummers in one of those bands. Band was called Funk Masters. And they would take a Kool and the Gang album or a Ohio Players, or even at that time, the Fusion was starting to get popular in the 70s, but they would take a record and play both sides top to bottom. That was the thing that you did in the afternoon. When the girls came in the park, which was after 7 o'clock, everybody just played a pocket and they started playing more James Brown and more things. So it was an interesting time when I played basketball. So I was always in the park all day anyway, but it was interesting to see. That was my first concert and probably the first time I experienced music in an area where it touched me. It wasn't really, and it was since I knew the guys and the guys knew me, it was a different kind of an experience than paying a ticket and going into a venue. But living in this city, you know, I did have that experience too of going to see music. And then the first records, it's funny because I grew up, I'm the youngest, so there were already records in the house from my dad's jazz collection, even the comedians too as well. And then he liked Harry Belafonte also, and Leontine Price's classicals, all of these things. So I already had a lot of music already, but when I think when I was 16, I went to the record store. I had enough money to get 2 albums, and I bought Miles Davis, Nefertiti, and Jeff Beck Wired. I figured I'd go 2 different directions on that because, to be in all honesty, I already had a lot of great music in the house, so I didn't need to buy Motown or Ohio Players. I have an older brother and sister, so those were the first records. When I was 16, I was legally allowed to have a record player in my room, a stereo system, which I still have, and I went downtown to buy my first 2 recordings of my own. So those were the first 2, but live music, fortunately, seeing it in the Bronx, it was in the park every weekend. If you wanted to go see who the new guitar player was, who the new trombone player was, who the new vocalist was, somebody had somebody on stage between Friday night and Sunday night. And it was a beautiful experience to see your neighbors and people in your community sounding amazing and playing note for note with records that you had in your collection.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right, I'm going to do another gear question because I'm a gear nerd. You guys have been lucky enough to have signature instruments along the way, and even the beginning. My first Cult of Personality video, the ESP. I imagine that guitar was burning, and just the graphics were just beautiful. Do you still have that guitar?
I have it right here.
Oh my gosh, it's right there.
Wow,
dude.
And this guitar is actually going to be going to the Smithsonian to be installed in the African American History Museum.
Nice.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's incredible.
This was built by the ESP company, and I got it in 1986. And I wrote the riff for Cult of Personality. We were all together, and I played that riff on this guitar. So it's a very special thing. And yeah, it's cool.
Wow.
Literally just happened to have it here because I had to take pictures of it to send it to these people.
That was like my biggest long shot of questions, and it was right there. So that was just ridiculous. When you were putting together the Vela PRS model, or Doug, your signature bass is like, what is the process in which you're doing that? Is it down to the pickups, the fret wire, the wood type?
Well, for me, it was, I was lucky to be working with Jeff Beck at the time, and then happened to be in the right place at the right time. That's how I came in contact with Spectre. Kramer was the company that was distributing Spectre at the time. They showed up at a Jeff Beck Jagger rehearsal to try to persuade Jeff to use one of the guitars. Jeff took a little shining to it, just had a little glance, left the room, and then Pierre DeBow part was like, well, Dougie's interested in Spectre basses, and that's how I got interested, how I got hooked up with Spectre. At that particular time, it was limited. They really had like one instrument. There wasn't many models or different styles. It was one instrument, and they would give you a loaner bass to use. So what I did at that particular time, not being experienced at knowing like, okay, use this wood, that neck, these pickups, whatever. The instrument sounded great. For me, I just wanted to have the neck thinner. And while you're at it, make the body a little bit thinner as well. And that's kind of how it played out for me. I started off playing a jazz bass, 1972 jazz. So I was used to that profile, and I just carried that over to my Spectre. And it's been working for me. It's pretty much been working for me. It's from my 1987 Spectre and my what's this one? This is the first one I got.
Wow.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Little thin neck profile, a little bit thinner. A lot of battle scars on the back. But it's so I did that, and then while I was at it, Stewart was just starting to get into the world of 5-string basses, and I just happened to again be at the right place at the right time. So I got this one from him, which is the 9th 5th string he ever made.
Wow.
And at that time, they were still they only had 4 colors you could get: natural wood, black, white, and red. So this was the original color. So it faded over the years to that.
That's awesome.
And a good axe is a good axe. So to this day, even though I have other Spectre basses, to be honest, none of them have been able to be duplicated like my 1987 Spectres. And I probably got about 10 of them upstairs.
Wow.
And they all have a good, none of them have the what it is, how instruments are, you know what I mean? None of them seem to have cut the mustard. I have another 2 basses here from the 87 series, a black fretless that I played on Nothingness, and then I have another white, I call it the Sting bass that has 2 jazz pickups. But my 87 Spectre basses to this day are still my go-to instruments, period. My 72 Fender Jazz, a couple of instruments.
That's my favorite.
That's the Sugar Hill bass. I did all the Sugar Hill records.
I love
stuff
that
like
bass.
Wow.
And,
Classic.
Yeah,
that's somewhere. Well, it's upstairs, but it says hi.
instruments are funny because they, I found that I like a particular neck shape, and the neck shape that I like is a V-shaped neck. It is basically from Fender had used many neck shapes for the Stratocaster, but there was a period from 63 to 65 where they had a V-shaped neck.
For the Clapton has to be, right?
Right. And I always like the feel of it. So all of my guitars, pretty much, that I've done with companies have this particular neck profile. The ESP, the Cult of Personality ESP has it. And then when I moved to the Hamer company, they built me this guitar right here. Just haven't had it right here. This guitar right here, right, this is the guitar I played with Living Color the most.
I love that guitar. Sounds
Yin
great.
Yang, this guitar, the Yin Yang guitar.
Which one? The Yin Yang?
Yeah.
Yin Yang cut.
And this was, and the funny thing is, Joel Danzig from the Hamer Company, he heard my ESP and he said, "Man, that guitar is really cool. Do you mind if we borrowed it?" And I sent it to him, and he had it, and he actually was very interesting that someone from another company would say this, particularly an American company saying it about a Japanese guitar. He said that guitar is amazing. He said like they played it, put through a lot of different things, and he said, "Let me try to make a guitar that would match it." And then he built this guitar, and it's a lot. It's lighter. It also has a V-shaped neck, and a this guitar has been with me for it's relicked. It's beaten up. It's been thrown across stages. It's been dropped. It has some of the earliest. I had EMG pickups in that other guitar, and I stayed with EMGs on this one, and it's fabulous. You know, I've used the Yin Yang guitar on all the records since it appeared. Since I got it, I've used it on all the records, and it's been a mainstay. Um, but of course, I also have this guitar, which is like a signature, it's a limited edition PRS signature instrument.
Yeah.
And the first one that I got, Savella, also V shaped neck. The first one I got, we were on the road. We were actually opening for Aerosmith, and they sent this instrument. It was may have been in Michigan, and they sent it to the hotel. And from the time I took it out of the box, this guitar is amazing, and it's around here somewhere. Um, so I've been very fortunate with the instruments over time. Like with each company, they've made at least one instrument that really has been amazing to me. I also had a time with Parker, and I love the Parker guitars. Unfortunately, the Parker brand kind of went sideways through mismanagement, which is a shame because it was a great brand, and
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be resurrected at some point. The brand will be.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, your PRS signature. I've played those, and they're fantastic. All PRS stuff is, but I know what you're talking about with that V-neck, and the way my hands are, that fits in my hand very nicely. So I totally get what you're saying there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very proud. I'm very proud of how it turned out, and I also did the collage, the artwork on the pick guard, and they kind of went with that, and so it's very cool.
It's awesome. All right, let's see. We're running low on time here. Let's go a bit on songwriting. So a big thing we try and do with all of our students, as I mentioned, we put them into groups, but if you're playing guitar, you're writing songs. If you're playing piano, you're writing songs. If you're playing drums, you're writing songs. Everyone's a musician. Everyone should be writing music. And a lot of people struggle, honestly, they're afraid to write lyrics because they're afraid to put their emotions out there and tell a story. So, Corey, what is your process when you're putting lyrics down? Is it made up stories? Is it stuff you've experienced? Is it a combination?
Singing a song is an exercise in acting, and I was taught that acting is retelling your life story constantly in any way, subtle way or form that you're doing. You're retelling your life story. So when I'm singing a song, I have to internalize it, personalize it, in order to interpret it for people to understand it. So the lyrics that are written or that have been written or that I have written have to have a spark of something that I can understand in it in order for me to do it, in order for me to do it successfully, to make sure that you understand what the lyrics are saying. So for songwriters and people who have a hard time writing lyrics, write about what you know. Even I don't care if it's about how you like pancakes, whatever. As long as you say it and you say it with conviction, it can't go wrong.
I like that. Do each one of you have a particular favorite song to play live? Is there something that, or does it change night to night?
I have two
It changes
two
for
or
me.
three all-time favorites that I like to play, no matter what the show is, and that would be "Memories Can't Wait," "This Is the Life," and I forgot the other. "Time's Up."
Cool.
Those are three songs where if they're whatever they are in the show, I like playing them. I like the dynamics of the songs, the different parts that change in the song, and the lyrics of the songs too. Even though one of the songs is a cover song. One of the things in talking with students about songwriting, I think is something that you probably are doing at the school, but I like to let younger students know is the same way Corey spoke about lyrics and imagination and storytelling. You have to also do that with sound.
Yes.
You know, you have to make the guitar sound romantic, or you have to make the drum pattern sound romantic. Or one of the things I try to do with when I read lyrics, whoever writes them in the band, is think about a pattern that fits the story. You know, "Open Letter to a Landlord," I wanted the drum pattern, although it's a huge bite off of Steve Ferrone, but I wanted the drum pattern in the song and the fills to sound like the lyrics, like to sound like homelessness, and I wanted the pattern to tell a story. Ed Stasium produced that, did a great job, so he was able to get great drum sounds. But one of the things I think it's important, especially for young people, to think about, like you give the students those pedals to go home and come up with ideas. Some of the things that I do with some of the younger students is I ask them to play me something sad on the drums, play me something happy, play me a victory on the play me total loss. What does that sound like? Play me a total loss beat or a total loss pattern. It's very interesting how the younger students do a much better job than the teenagers and the older ones do, because they're so kind of wide open. But in talking about lyrics and definition, I also think part of what makes any great track, a Led Zeppelin track, or a Fishbone track, or a Bad Brains track, is what's the sounds and what's being played along with the lyric. And that's something that I just wanted to throw out there. For me, working with Living Colors, I always try to think about that. And "Memories Can't Wait" is such a storytelling, trippy kind of a song that I wanted to kind of have patterns and beats that kind of blend in with how Vernon's guitar is playing. You know, the bass line is the loop of the bass line, and Corey's lyric on that is almost like he's not singing it. Almost, he's just telling a story. So what kind of drum pattern are you going to create to set that up? So those things. "Time's Up's just fun to play, and it's the one song no one likes making a mistake on. So it's like a great song to play. It's the only time in the show I feel like everybody's concentrating. That's my opinion. It's like it's the one nobody wants to screw that song up. It's really fast and it's really tight, and it's so easy. It's like it's the China, it's the bull in the China shop, as they say. It's like it's so easy to do one thing. You know how the song goes. You're having fun, and you want to get cute, maybe with the song, but one wrong that song.
You do not want to get on the other side of that.
That's the song. That's one wrong move, and you are dead. You are dead. You can't recover. It's like turning that corner on the Indianapolis 500, turning too far out. That car takes off. You are out of the race. It's kind of so that's why I kind of like that song. The focus of it. And "This Is a Life" also, once again, beautiful lyrics. It's a great story. It's a great imagination, and it has a real life spiritual side to it, but it also has this kind of fantasy side to it. I'm talking about from the drummers, from part wise, and what I want to make the stuff sound, how I want the guitar solo to sound. I didn't want it to sound like the verses. I want it to sound like we were in a new, like the guitar solo is like the desert and the song is a city. Like that's how I was thinking about the parts visually, trying to get the sounds to match. So it's something that I wanted to add to that. I think it's important, whatever instrument you play, to try to match the tone and the vibe with the lyric.
I think that's incredible.
One thing I like about us as an ensemble is the way the whole thing of patterns and sounds and the feeling of the thing, kind of the way they work together, and the way they work together inside and outside of different idioms. Like we did a version of the song "Preaching Blues," by Robert Johnson. And the whole way that came about was so interesting because it was really like we were playing the centenary, the 100th anniversary of Robert Johnson, and we literally put together the arrangement in the dressing room on the way to the stage at the Apollo.
Wow.
And which is, if you don't have complete confidence in your people, there's no way you would ever do it. There's no way you would ever do it, to just go and then and this, and the thing about it is, I will say this, on behalf of us, that was one of the highlights of that whole evening. There
You
were a
could watch
lot
it on
of
YouTube.
it
You
was
could
I
watch
mean
it.
it was great musicians. I mean, we're talking about Taj Mahal,
Yeah.
Elvis Costello. It was a house full of legendary people. And we did this thing that literally we couldn't sound check. We literally met up in the dressing room, and it was like, what
Wow.
we gonna do? And Corey said, put those lyrics on that riff, and we're on stage. And at that point, there's nothing, as Doug likes to say, the ball is in play. There's nothing else to do but to do it, right? So
In that regard, I just want to say sorry, Brennan, but
go ahead.
that's a compliment to how long and how well we know each other musically, and that's what our songwriting becomes at a certain point. Like we write knowing exactly what Will, what Doug, what Vernon, what I am going to do. There are times when Vernon writes lyrics for certain things and he puts a word in that he knows I'm going to sing a certain way. The word is
Wow.
and I sing and a different way every time. Um, so we understand that sort of thing. So when we were doing this show at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and we were all flying in from all different sorts of places, we hadn't been on the road for a minute. We understood each other. We understood what we needed. We understood how to do that, and that's how we write songs as well. That's how we create. Period. Because we're recreating songs sometimes on the fly, on stage. That's how we understand each other, how we love each other, really.
It's
Some of those
very
patterns come from a guitar cable going out, or a kick drum head breaking. It's true. Sometimes the
It's true.
Corey grabs the mic after running out on the audience, and the cable's not connected or falls out, and then Vernon will look at me or Doug will look at me. We'll go into another pattern for 4/8 bars, and that whole thing could turn into a song later on.
Right.
So it's really like it's like live sports. You got to cover something. Some of those things are not planned. Some are sound check grooves. Sometimes their mistakes come into being amazing. In the words of Miles Davis, amazing things.
mistake.
Yeah. So the idea is, it gets down to when you have a school and you have young students. What is music at the end of the day? Is it always this kind of academic thing, or is it just sound? Is it noise? Can they just kind of frolic around with sounds to kind of get an idea? And that's also the part about Living Color that's great. It's very serious musicianship, yes, but we do leave room for all of the bananas things that goes on in all of 40s heads at times, whether it's avant-garde or it's just something that's very serious, or something that's really playful, or something that's very academic. It's all of those things kind of go into the writing, and some stuff's just sectioned out. I've done drum clinics with Doug being a guest, or me being a guest on Doug's bass clinics, and we'll play Go Away, or we'll play a song in the clinic, a Living Color song, the part that's directly on the record, and people kind of go like, wow, and they don't realize that those are serious parts. Like we just play the song as if Vernon and Corey are there on stage, and it's just bass and drums. It's actually a great exercise that we used to do on each other's clinics, and it was interesting even for me to hear it that way and to do it that way sometimes, because those parts, it's like 4 lanes in a highway, and those 2 parts take up 2 of those lanes, and I think as a listener or someone who's Living Color fan, to hear 1 or 2 Living Color songs with just the bass and the drums, it lays out a different kind of definition also on all of those things Corey and Vernon are doing that might be taken for granted, or that people might assume it's just little pieces over the top. You really have the cake without the icing, so to speak, in a way. It's a different story. So that's also on the composing thing when it comes down to parts. It's how things work out. And it's trust. When we were doing Go Away, I had 2 different drum patterns. And it was Vernon's idea to say, oh, when the first verse played the A beat and then play the B beat, and the second verse played the B beat, then play the A beat. You know, that was the whole thing with those patterns. And that was a great idea. I was like, that's a cool, yeah, definitely, because I was playing it the same way on both verses. And he's like, what if you did A, B, and then B, A? And to me, it made the whole song feel different.
Sure.
So those are the kind of little things that small little issues that go into things sometimes that change a song. That is a composer element. That is definitely like a composer element to the piece of music.
Will brings up a very good point in that, in terms of thinking about it for your students and writing, is don't get stuck. You can get stuck on the song is going to have a life of its own. Like you're creating it, right? But the song is going to also, writers also say this about characters. Like you write a character and you intended to kill off a character, and the character, you can't do it because the character, and you go, and I would go like, what does that even mean? But it's very, very true with songs. Songs will have a life of their own, and they'll take you on a journey that you didn't expect for it to take you on. And that's a part of it. You know, that's a part of it as well. And we found it in terms of both the cover things we've done as well as the originals, that there's a certain, like we have been doing the song by Biggie Smalls, Who Shot You? And Who Shot You is funny because that song has a weird oscillation because the song is also about what happened to Christopher Wallace in the end. So that's also part of the thing that we're very aware of when we're putting certain energy and certain things out into the world, that we're also going on a journey with this music and these tunes. So don't be afraid for the tune to take you, and you may want to muscle a tune and do that, but you also got to be aware that the music is going to take you to a place, and you got to let it.
And for younger students too, man, tell the students they should experiment. Don't get locked into rock only meaning one thing, or country and western only meaning one thing. You know, Broken Hearts was a great example of that on that album that you held up. You know, let the students know, inject all of those things they're thinking about. They have the YouTubes and the Spotifys and the so on, and they can pull ideas out. Don't be afraid of trying something in the metal that they're playing.
Yep.
Or something in the acoustic song that's maybe not typical. Think about writing also in that aspect, that sometimes, you know, the square peg in the round hole actually works for that song.
Yeah.
That's true. Also, a lot of times it's about having fun. With us, with Living Color, we'll be at sound check. We'll be jamming on something, or Vernon will play a riff, and then I'll be like, Vernon, what was that? Play it again. You know what I mean? Or Corey will go. We coax each other on. You know what I mean? You hear a vibe going, and you're like, yeah, man, that's kind of dope. Do that again. Corey would be like, yo, here's a bass line, you know, whatever. But the other thing is just have fun. You know, it's about having fun. So, and I think also with the kids, when I'm working with kids, I'm like, everybody take your instrument off. All right, let's just have a chat. Matter of fact, guitar player, get on drums. Yep. They start laughing. Drummer, get on guitar. He might know four notes. Bass player, switch it up. Why? Because everybody's out of character at that time. And then they're kind of having fun. And then you're like, okay, now what did you think about that? You maybe get everybody on the same wavelength in a sense. But jamming is a good thing, just kind of like to get a spark going on. Then once you get a phrase, it's like putting a puzzle together. You start, and then you also have to focus on those that are really like in the band, that are really, everybody's a good songwriter, but I'll always go to Vernon. I'm like, Vernon and Will are extensive writers in a sense. So I'll be like, Vernon, what you got? Well, I got this. We might be a little timid. I'm like, break the book out. Where's the book? You know, Vernon will be working on something. He'll do a jam, and then he'll sit up all night and he'll write something. And then Corey will go to Will, what you got? So we work together. I might come up with like a phrase or something, like a slogan or a line, and then we start to put the pieces it's like a board game at that time. So you just have fun.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you start off with one thing and you splinter off into something else, and then you get back to maybe the other theme you were talking about. Now two things have been created. So just don't take, just have fun.
And
go ahead, Corey.
no, I'm just saying, Will is one of the best lyricists I've ever met in my life. In terms of writing patterns, Doug makes amazing patterns. Vernon comes up with riffs all the time. Amazing riffs all the time. When he's just sort of like noodling, he comes up with riffs. And we always sort of hear that in each other. And we go, why don't we use that? Let's use that. Stop that. Play that till then, and then we'll figure something out from there. And we go on from there. And it extends our reach. Because most people expect we wrote a song that was pretty popular, that we're going to write another song just like it. We never have. We have never written another cult of personality, ever, and there's no reason why we should. We always took that as the baseline and moved from there.
One of the things Doug brings up a good point. I just want to say briefly, Billy Cobham, the great Billy Cobham, had a camp last summer where it was rhythm section lab, and it was communicating. You played last. He had a whole thing with he had a great camp with killer players. And he said he noticed when he hires younger musicians, they don't even know how to talk. They come on the stage, a bass player plugs his bass in, doesn't even ask him, how you doing? What key is it in? He said, there's no code. Yo, it's a blues. It's a 4 bars. You open up this. The guys just sit down and he said, how are we going to start it? So he decided, he called me and told me, I was happy, thrilled that he did it. But he had a camp, 4 sessions with killer rhythm section guys, with students, where you sit down, and he said, what's the etiquette for coming into a room, a recording session or a stage and making music? First of all, you don't just pick up your axe. When you're meeting people, you don't walk into a room, you say, hi, how you doing? What's going on? Can I buy you a drink? Or what else? All of these things. And he said, in music, it should be the same way. And he was frustrated living in Europe. He told me with younger cats or really great musicians that weren't known, they didn't have any stage etiquette. They would just walk up and just plug in. And he felt abused, he said, about sitting down and having a guy, you look at a chart and they're going to play together without even talking about, yo, man, just,
right.
You want to try this in the samba feel? You want to take 4 bars out? And let me just look at this letter A for a minute. And Billy Cobham told me that he did this. I saw a bit of it online. Maybe you can find it online, but I thought that was an interesting approach to teaching a guy like him to have a school, have a summer camp of band kind of rhythm section etiquette, writing etiquette, what you do on stage, how you work with the horn section, how to work with the guitar, the keyboards, the background vocals. He wanted to have this camp of communicating before writing, and then it makes the writing more enhanced.
Yeah, I think you're so dead on with that, because a lot of these younger players, they sit and they jam with YouTube all day long, and YouTube is a tremendous tool. I'm not putting it down, but they don't have that hang, like it's human, and it's a transference of energy. And that's a big thing that we try and convey here as well. So that's just so validating to hear, it coming back at me. One of the big reasons why I was so excited to have the whole band here is I think you guys have had such incredible longevity. And I think that comes from the ability to gel together and sort of communicate on this other dimensional level of stuff. We had a period of time, handful of years back, Cult of Personality was the song for CM Punk, a wrestler.
Yeah.
And all these kids were like, I want to learn this riff. And I'm like, whoa. There's more. It's not just that song. Check it out. Check out Leave It Alone. Check out Behind the Sun. Keep going. There's more. And I think if people just ride that wave of your musical journey and what you guys put out there and then watch these live performances, I think there's so much to learn from guys like you. So thank you so much for sharing some of your time with me here. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time because you gave me 8 extra minutes. So thank you for that. But you guys stay safe, and I'll link all the socials when I repost the podcast and stuff. I'll try and find some of the videos you talked about too. So we'll see you guys out there.
Take care.
Thanks, man.
All right, gentlemen.
Thanks. Take care, guys. Good to see you, man.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Peace.
Bye-bye.